Mr. Ámos Hooksteen, U.S. Special Envoy for International Energy, welcome to this exclusive interview with Al-Harra. First, I will begin this interview with the forefront issue here, the maritime border dispute between Lebanon and Israel. What is Lebanon's position on your proposal?
Well, first, Mona, thank you for having me on Al-Harra and allowing me to join you. I arrived in Beirut yesterday for another trip to listen to the Lebanese government. I was here a few months ago and made a few proposals on what the next step of negotiations could look like. I shared those proposals with the other side, with Israel as well. And today was really about listening to the Lebanese government officials and hearing their views and receiving their ideas on potential pathways forward.
What did you hear from the Lebanese part?
Well, the good news is that I heard a lot more unanimity, a lot more unity of message, serious preparation for the visit. And they shared some ideas of how to continue the negotiation, the basis for which to continue the negotiations, and to take it a step forward. And I think what I also heard was a clear understanding that the real option for the future of Lebanon, a real concern by all three presidents and the other leaders that I met with, that the economic crisis in Lebanon that is so closely tied with the energy crisis in Lebanon needs to be solved. And resolving the maritime dispute is really a critical and important step to resolving this economic crisis and to beginning the pathway towards recovery and growth again. And therefore, I think that this was a very serious attempt to look at options of moving forward with the idea that we need to be in a position of compromise and creative thinking.
Did you bring new suggestions or points?
No, today I was here to listen to the reaction to the proposals and points that I have raised in the past.
Only to listen?
Well, to listen, to receive, to discuss, but I've already, as I think as folks know, I presented some proposals in the past, and today I got the feedback to those proposals.
Okay, may I ask you, what did you receive exactly from the Lebanese side? A written answer, a verbal answer, and will it enable the negotiations to go forward?
Well, I think that it will enable the negotiations to go forward. I've received their views on what Lebanon thinks could be the next step, the next idea. I can't share those ideas exactly because we're in a delicate place where we're trying to get the sides to narrow the gaps and to get to a place where they can reach agreement. I think that's crucial for Lebanon, and I think that's, quite frankly, that's crucial for Israel. And so I will, before I share them with you, Mona, I will share them with the other side, with Israel, and we'll go from there.
So are you going to Israel and coming back to Lebanon?
I will share these ideas with Israel, and as soon as I get a proposal and response back from the Israelis, I will communicate that back to the government here in Lebanon.
Are you optimistic about what you've heard today?
I think anybody who is, if you're not optimistic in this business of diplomacy, you shouldn't be in diplomacy. If you say that you're not optimist about the ability to move forward and to get to growth and prosperity and hope and cooperation and collaboration and focusing on what really matters to making Lebanon a better place to live, to raise your family. If you're not optimistic about that, then you shouldn't be in diplomacy. And that's why I'm here, because I am an optimist, even when it's difficult.
It is.
Today is not difficult, but even when it's difficult, I'm an optimist that we can get to a better place.
The Lebanese people really want to hear something new about the maritime border dispute.
It's, you know, it's hard to say new things when we've known what the parameters of this dispute have been for a very long time. Lebanon deposited and announced its boundary. Israel announced theirs, and we had 860 square kilometers of a dispute. And we want to be able to get to a place where Lebanon can begin getting foreign investment and drilling for natural gas. That will help. You know, I got to tell you, Mona, in every meeting that I had today, every single one,
okay,
the lights went out in the middle, at least once, if not twice. How can you build a business? How can you run a home? How can you build a small business? How could you be an entrepreneur? If you don't know if the lights are going to go on, if you don't know if your computers are going to run, if your machines are going to run. So I want Lebanon to be in a position where it could join the rest of the Eastern Mediterranean, Cyprus and Egypt and Israel and Greece, and drill for its own resources, especially natural gas, be able to deliver natural gas, cheaper natural gas for electricity in Lebanon, to make sure that you have 24 hours a day of electricity and not 2 or 4 hours a day of electricity, not to buy it from, you know, black market people who are giving you generators, but just know that you, like in most countries, you flip the switch and the lights goes on, and the air conditioning goes on, and the computer goes on. And I think if we solve the maritime dispute, I think we can, that's what Lebanon can have, and Lebanon could then be exporting potentially. Who knows? Think about it this way. I started working on this almost 10 years ago, my first time around. If we reached the deal then, in 2015 or 2016, when there were deals on the table, today, Lebanon would have 24-hour electricity. It would be selling natural gas into the market that at the highest prices and buying the cheapest prices. Instead, Lebanon is now buying energy at the most expensive prices, when it may have it right there in their waters. So I hope for the Lebanese people that we don't need to hear new things. We need to resolve old disputes.
Great. Has Lebanon discussed with you today the Line 29? The Lebanese Army technical and logistics team stated that they are building a strong case for Line 29.
I think the strongest case people should build in Lebanon is what will work.
What will work?
What will work? Which line? What solution?
What will work?
I think a solution that would work is to stop thinking about, do I have the most legal case? Do I have my most maximal position? Do I want to be the most right? Because sometime when you're the most right, you also have nothing to show for it. There are two sides here. Both sides need to get something out of this. So instead of focusing on what's right, what is rightfully mine, versus the other side says what's rightfully theirs, the thinking instead should be, as much energy should be placed into thinking, what is a creative idea that we can all compromise around, that both sides will feel, I may not have gotten everything I want, but I got a lot more than what I have right now, which really in the case of Lebanon right now is nothing.
Mr. Hawkstein, Gibran Bassil said, now is the time to establish the principle of Karish for Qana. What's your position on this issue?
I think a lot of people have ideas of what the negotiations should be. I think the Lebanese government has taken a very strong step forward today by presenting a more united approach, by thinking through. I don't think it's about slogans. It's about looking at what kind of a compromise can be reached that the Israelis can agree to and not feel that it is being pushed into something against their interest, while still preserving the most important part of Lebanon's interests. So it's not about one formula or another, it's about what works. And I think that's where the hard work is. And I know it's difficult because people like sound bites. And I think these things tend to be somewhat more complicated than that.
In the previous round of negotiations, you were optimistic and said the two sides were narrowing gaps, but then the process stalled and mediation stopped. Is there a target date for resuming talks with Israel? Do you believe there is a possibility to carry negotiations to a fruitful conclusion?
I do. I think that we can get to a fruitful conclusion. I think it's imperative that we all think we can get to a fruitful conclusion. That is why I'm here. I don't believe that we stalled the negotiations. Throughout the time that I haven't been here for the last 3 months, I have kept my discussions with government officials here in Lebanon and with folks in Israel, as well as with some of the neighboring countries, to see what we can do to move it forward. Today I got responses back to the proposals that I presented in the past, and I think we have our work cut out for us to try to get to renew. Hopefully we can narrow the gaps to such a degree that we can go back to face-to-face negotiations. I hope and believe that that is possible. I'll know more in the next few weeks.
Media and political figures have commented extensively on the arrival of the Energean ship. Some accused Israel of threatening, and others have issued threats in return. Is this helpful to the negotiations?
I'll tell you two things. One, the Energean, the Greek company, the ship that arrived, the vessel that arrived, is not its first vessel. The other vessels arrived at that, and nobody raised any objections in the past. We've known everyone in Lebanon, everyone in the region, everyone who wanted to go on the internet and look at the news, knew this ship was going to be arriving at some point in order to do the drilling. I think in general, it's better to focus on building things than threatening to destroy them. So I hope that the rhetoric is geared towards cooperation and not thinking about what the other side, how can I stop the other side from doing something, but focusing on how can I build something here. Mm-hmm. Destroying if you prevent them from drilling, you've gained nothing. All you've gotten is them to stop. But how does that help? All that energy, all that effort to stop them from doing something. You go home at night, it's a hot night, your air conditioning still doesn't work because the lights don't go on. Your computer, your battery's dead and you can't plug it in, and you got to go and buy really expensive energy from people selling generators, and now you got to go buy the generator fuel. So the other side, stopping them doesn't matter. It doesn't build anything. So I think that everybody in Lebanon should focus more on how to build a better Lebanon rather than worrying so much about stopping somebody else.
Are you paying attention to Nasrallah's remarks on Hezbollah's position on the maritime negotiations?
I listen to all voices coming out of Lebanon to understand where people are. And I have to tell you, I think the vast majority of the people of Lebanon want to focus on building a better Lebanon. That's what I want to focus on. And so again, I think that the kind of rhetoric that will be helpful will be one that is focused solely on building Lebanon. I don't hear enough of that. And I wish the same people who spend time threatening others would instead put out plans for how to make Lebanon a better place for its people, so that people who've left would come back, so that they don't send their income back to their families from overseas, but rather that they invest that income here in building new businesses, so Lebanon can grow and prosper. So
we know you met with Minister Fayyad, and we've seen reports that the United States is creating blockades to the plan to import gas and electricity from Egypt and Jordan. Can you update us on the status?
The United States never blocked this, ever. The United States wants to see energy supplies coming into Lebanon. I think the pipeline from Egypt through Jordan and Syria into Lebanon is a very good idea. The United States supports it as long as it is done in a way that doesn't contradict and doesn't violate the Caesar Act sanctions. I believe that's possible. I have been on the phone for countless amount of calls with three out of the four parties, with Egypt, with Jordan, and with Lebanon. I've talked to Minister Fayyad on the phone. Our embassy here is in touch with him. I've talked to the Egyptians and the Jordanians on a regular basis, and I believe that if the parties themselves can reach agreement, if they can sign contracts and reach that final agreement, I believe we'll be able to be in a place to review it and ultimately approve it.
Did you promise Minister Fayyad you will help Lebanon?
Of course, I've been promising Minister Fayyad and every other government official here in Lebanon that I will help Lebanon, and I've been doing that for a very long time. On this pipeline, I've been promising it for many months that I believe this is a project that's important to me.
Where is the problem exactly then?
I don't think it's about a problem. I think that sometimes negotiations among four countries are not that easy to do and to complete. I think it's nearing completion. I gave testimony before the US Senate last week, and I was asked this question, and I said we've given pre-approval for this project, and as soon as Egypt and Lebanon can agree on the terms, which hasn't happened yet, we could then evaluate the project, and assuming that it doesn't do anything different than what we believe, then I believe it will be, we will be in a place that we can say that it does not violate Caesar Act sanctions, and we can have the gas finally flow.
Mr. Ámos Hooksteen, U.S. Special Envoy for International Energy, thank you for this special interview.
Thank you, Mona. It's a pleasure.